$20 billion. One visit. And a sentence nobody in Brussels wanted to hear. Deeply committed to your success. That was the US Secretary of State, standing next to Orbán, in Budapest. 6 weeks before the most important election in Hungary's modern history, on camera. In the official transcript of the United States Department of State. Not a rumor, not a leak, the actual record. And the EU? The same week. 22 billion euros still frozen. 1 million euros per day in penalty payments. Defense funds delayed. A 5-step plan circulating in Brussels with step 2 written in plain language. Wait for Orbán's electoral defeat. 2 sides. One man in the middle, and only one of them is being honest about what they are doing. Here is what mainstream media will not put in the same frame. Let's go. The visit happened on February 16th. Marco Rubio, US Secretary of State, flew personally to Budapest. Not a phone call. Not a statement from Washington. A flight. A handshake. A signing ceremony. And a press conference that has to be read word by word to understand what actually happened. Orbán opened with this. A new golden age has set upon us concerning the relationship between the United States and Hungary. He said he could not remember. In over 30 years of politics, the bilateral relationship ever being at this level. That is not diplomatic language. That is a campaign speech. And Rubio was standing right next to him when he said it. But let's get to the number, because the number is the story. $20 billion. That is the potential value of the nuclear cooperation agreement Rubio signed in Budapest that day. Up to 10 small modular reactors. Westinghouse supplying the nuclear fuel. Spent fuel storage technology included. The agreement covers Hungary's entire civilian nuclear future, and it shifts that future away from Russia and toward the United States. 10% of Hungary's entire economic output. Signed. 6 weeks before the election. This is not a friendship gift. Investments of this size do not happen without expected returns. And the return here is not measured in currency, it is measured in alignment. Now let's look at what else was in that package. Because the nuclear deal was only one part. 17 US investments in Hungary announced since January 2025. A record for the entire decade. Visa-free travel for Hungarian citizens to the United States. A sanctions waiver allowing Hungary to continue purchasing Russian oil, exempting them from US penalties that apply to every other buyer. And the financial shield. Rubio stated directly that if Hungary faces financial or economic pressure from external sources, Washington will look for ways to help. External pressure. That phrase is doing enormous work. Because everyone in the room knew exactly what external pressure meant. It meant the 22 billion euros Brussels has frozen. It meant the 1 million euro per day in penalty payments. It meant the EU's 5-step plan. Rubio was not just signing a nuclear deal. He was telling the EU, whatever you do to him financially, we will offset it. That changes everything. And here's why mainstream media buried this completely. The question that broke the press conference open came from a CBS journalist. She asked Rubio about the sanctions waiver for Russian oil. His answer was recorded in the official US State Department transcript. Word for word, he said this. Those sanctions waivers happened because of the relationship between the Prime Minister and the President. Not security policy. Not energy independence. Not strategic alignment. The relationship between two men. He said it openly. On camera. In the official record. This is not diplomacy. This is a deal structure. And deal structures have terms, timelines, and conditions. The condition here was stated implicitly but unmistakably. The waiver exists as long as Orbán is Prime Minister. Without Russian oil at current prices, Orbán himself said Hungarian energy bills would be 3 times higher. Trump did not just support Orbán politically. He prevented the energy crisis that could have ended his government. Now let's look at the pattern. Because Budapest was not a one-off. Al Jazeera documented the following sequence. In Argentina, the Trump administration threatened to withhold a $20 billion assistance package if voters chose the wrong candidate. The Trump-backed candidate won. In Honduras, same structure. Public endorsement, threat of aid withdrawal. Candidate wins. The pattern. Endorsement first, economic package second, consequence implied third. With Orbán, the sequence ran like this. February 5th. At the Gaza peace deal announcement. Trump said directly, behind you 100%. February 16th. Rubio in Budapest. Nuclear deal signed. Sanctions waiver confirmed. February 19th. At the Board of Peace in Washington. Trump gave what he called complete and total endorsement. Then again on Truth Social. 4 times in 2 weeks. Each endorsement accompanied by a concrete financial instrument. Anyone who still calls this spontaneous friendship does not understand how geopolitics works. But here is the detail that no German, French, or Belgian newspaper reported. And it is the most important detail of the entire press conference. A second journalist asked Rubio a direct question. If Orbán loses, despite all of this, will the United States commit to working just as constructively with his successor? Rubio did not answer the question, he said. And this is the official transcript, that the Prime Minister and the President have a very, very close personal relationship and that it has made all the difference in the world. That is a non-answer. And the non-answer is the answer. The United States has not committed to any relationship with a post-Orbán Hungary. The nuclear deal, the investments, the sanctions waiver, the financial shield. These are tied to a person, not a state. The EU, for all its criticism of Orbán's democratic record, at least pretends its mechanisms apply to institutions. Washington is running a different system entirely. This is not an alliance between governments. This is a contract between two leaders. Now let's be precise about what this means for the election itself. The polling gap is real. Independent firms have shown the opposition candidate Peter Magyar leading 55 to 35. Government-aligned polling shows Fidesz ahead at 45. A 20-point gap between pollsters measuring the same country is not statistical noise. It is a signal that someone is measuring something other than reality. What is real? Fidesz has won 8 consecutive by-elections. Magyar's TISA party has not contested a single one of them. The track record of actual votes, not surveys, belongs entirely to one side. What is also real? The April 12th vote will happen in an environment where the EU has frozen 22 billion euros. The US has injected a $20 billion nuclear deal. Energy prices have been held down by a sanctions waiver, and the American president has endorsed one candidate 4 times in 14 days. Both external powers are intervening in this election. The difference is that one of them is doing it openly, and the other is calling it rule of law. Now let's talk about the part that mainstream media never connects. And this is the part that matters most for anyone watching outside Hungary. The nuclear deal runs for decades. 10 small modular reactors take years to build. The Westinghouse fuel supply agreement locks in a supplier relationship that stretches far beyond any single election cycle. If Orbán wins, the dependency is clear and deliberate. If Magyar wins. And this is the part nobody is discussing. He inherits every single one of these arrangements. The 17 US investments are already running. The nuclear agreement is signed. The sanctions waiver structure exists. Magyar would face a binary choice: honor the dependencies and become a different version of the same alignment, or cancel them and trigger an immediate economic shock that his new government cannot survive. That is not a loophole in the strategy. That is the strategy. The nuclear deal is not a gift to Orbán the person. It is a claim on Hungary the country. And whoever runs Hungary after April 12th will govern inside the terms of that claim. Rubio said something else in Budapest that received almost no coverage. He called Orbán essential to American interests. Not useful. Not helpful. Essential. That is a word with consequences. Essentials are protected. Essentials are not abandoned. Essentials do not get replaced without cost. And then he added this: Hungary should thrive. His phrase: as long as you're prime minister. Read that sentence again. Not as long as our alliance holds. Not as long as Hungary remains a reliable partner. As long as you are prime minister. The financial shield, the nuclear deal, the sanctions waiver, the endorsements. All of it has a condition attached. One man. One office. One outcome on April 12th. The EU's approach has been just as conditional, just as interventionist, and considerably less honest about it. The 5-step plan that circulated out of Brussels. Step 2 reads: wait for Orbán's electoral defeat. EU Parliament members have said publicly that every euro to Orbán goes to Moscow. 22 billion euros frozen. Defense funds withheld. Penalty payments accumulating at 1 million per day for over 500 days. Neither side is operating on principle. Both sides are operating on interest. The only question worth asking is, which side is being honest about it? And that is the question mainstream media will not ask. Because asking it requires putting both stories in the same frame. The nuclear deal story and the frozen funds story. The endorsement timeline and the 5-step plan. The Rubio transcript and the Politico leak. Separately, each story confirms a pre-existing narrative. Together, they reveal something different. They reveal that Hungary on April 12th is not a national election. It is a proxy contest between two external powers with opposing visions for what Europe should become. The EU wants a Brussels-aligned Hungary that votes yes on Ukraine funding, accepts qualified majority decisions, and stops blocking the expansion agenda. Washington wants a Budapest-aligned Hungary that breaks EU consensus, creates a pressure point inside the bloc, and demonstrates that a nationalist government can survive and thrive inside the European Union with American backing. One of these visions wins on April 12th. Or neither does. And if neither does, if the result is unclear, contested, or too close for either side to claim, then the real instability begins. What happens when a $20 billion nuclear deal meets a disputed election? What happens when a financial shield meets a new government that wants to cancel the terms? What happens when the EU activates Article 7 against a country that now has a currency swap agreement with the United States Treasury? Those questions do not have answers yet, but they will after April 12th. And that is why this is not a story about Hungary. It is a story about what Europe is becoming. A battlefield where the rules are written by whoever has the larger financial instrument, where sovereignty is the word both sides use to justify whatever they were already going to do. Orbán understood this before anyone else in the EU did. He has been playing both ends for 15 years. Russian energy kept his voters warm. American endorsements kept Brussels nervous. The question was always, which dependency do you end up with? The answer, as of February 16th, is both. Orbán is not switching dealers. He now has two. The Russian oil flows through the sanctions waiver. The American nuclear fuel arrives through the Westinghouse Agreement. The EU's $22 billion sits frozen. And Washington's $20 billion is on its way in. That is the full picture. That is what no single headline will tell you. And that is exactly why the next 6 weeks will determine something much larger than who governs Hungary. Subscribe. Because by the time April 12th hits the news, it will already be too late to understand what actually happened.